Hello and welcome to another episode of the B2B Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Nils, and today is episode number 100. Super excited to have reached 100 episodes, especially considering that the vast majority of podcasts out there never get past 10 before they stop. So we're hitting 100, and getting to this point is an awesome reminder and reinforcement that it's really important to take everything with a long-term view. Podcast is a long-term play. The content I produce is a long-term play. My relationships with my clients is a long-term play. And this is a big milestone. And anytime you hit a big milestone or hit any milestone, it's really a great idea to reflect and look back at how far you've come to help inform where you're going to go next. So I want to take that time today on episode number 100 to look back at the beginning of this podcast, but also where my business, my life has been over the last several years, and then share a little bit about what's going to happen next. The number one theme that I see when I look back is evolution. And I want to talk about this in terms of my business and the podcast. Now, my core business, I set foot on my own and set out to be the first customer success consulting firm that ever existed. That was January 1st of 2015, which is almost 9 years ago as of the recording of this episode, which is late in the fall of 2023. Now that's pretty amazing, as a lot has changed since 2015. A lot has changed in the world. We went through an entire pandemic during that time. A lot has changed in my work, and I'll share the differences of what I was doing back then and what I'm doing now, and how this podcast has played a key role. So from 2015 to 2020, when the pandemic hit, my sole focus really was on customer success consulting. And I would go in and help early stage, growth stage, scale stage companies build world-class customer success organizations that delivered predictable renewals and expansions. And I did this from a consultative capacity, but I also ran training programs specifically to enable those individuals on those teams working on the front lines with clients how to build long-term strategic relationships. Now, I still do this work today, but it has evolved and it has changed as the market has evolved and as my life has evolved too. So when the pandemic hit in 2020, ultimately what happened was my consulting business disappeared overnight. And I had been running for almost 5 years, and then all of a sudden I went from having a great pipeline and a great set of clients I was working with to within 48 hours it went to zero. And I got call after call after call of my clients telling me, we can't pay you, we have to stop everything, I don't know when this is going to come back, I'll call you later. And so this 48 hours was a real wake-up call because I had no idea what I was going to do, and frankly most of the world didn't have any idea what they were going to do, but I was paid out of usually discretionary funding budgets. And individuals would, identify a need, I would talk to them, we would negotiate a price, and then they would find the money and get approval. So it wasn't something that they planned for a year or two in advance. These were opportunistic things, and those budgets were frozen as soon as the pandemic hit. And it was at this time where I had to take a real step back, and I had to say, okay, if this could happen in the matter of 48 hours, my entire business could go to zero. Right? I'm way too exposed. I need to have more opportunities, more potential ways to work with clients, and more potential ways ultimately to make money. And that was what was going to sustain me. So I set out on a track to change this and to evolve my business. And that's when I decided to write my book, The 30-Day Leadership Playbook, Your Guide to Becoming the Leader You Have Always Wanted to Be, which became a best-selling book as soon as it was released. If you would like a free digital copy, just go to leadershipmba.com/book, type in your name and email, I'll send it right away to you. So the summer of 2020 was spent writing that book, and I hit the gas incredibly hard. And when I say hard, I mean the only thing I did for at least 30 plus days was write the first draft of my book, which ended up being about 40,000 words. I sent it off to the publisher and was super excited. And then I spent the next 2 months figuring out how to do all the other pieces of publishing a book, because there's artwork, there's design, there's marketing, there's copy, there's all kinds of things that have to come into play. And I hired lots of coaches to help me along the way, and I actually went through a training program for how to go from a blank page to a published author, and it was a wonderful program. But I never would have been able to go from blank page to published author with a best-selling book in a little over 100 days if I had not enlisted the help of a program and paid money to take the fast track. So it was a really important thing, and good takeaway is always, if there's something you want to do, there is somebody who's already done it that can teach you how to do it infinitely faster than you would be able to if you were trying to learn on your own. If I tried to learn all the things I learned in that program on my own, we'd be sitting here 3 years plus later, and I would still probably not have a book published. So it pays to get a coach. So that book was published in September of 2020, and I was ecstatic because now I had this opportunity to share my deep passion for leadership skills and my deep expertise in having been a leadership coach for over a decade, spending a couple thousand hours working one-on-one with clients. I had a way to share some of that knowledge and expertise that only existed inside of personal client relationships. And I knew these tools were incredibly powerful because I had used them myself to go from a manager to a director to a VP or an IC actually, all the way up to a VP in 2.5 years. And then I had helped my clients go through very similar trajectories and paths, getting promoted from manager to director, director to VP, VP to C-level, in similar fashions as a result of using these tools. And I had a deep desire to, one, have a bigger impact with the knowledge that I had acquired and the experience I had gained. And I did that, the starting point was with the book. So after the book was released, a couple months later, right about Black Friday, I ran a promotion where I offered to do a live training program for 6 or 7 weeks at a very low price to experiment with could I run training programs on the back of my book. There was a lot of great feedback I got about my book, and if you've ever read any book, the question is always, well, that's awesome, and how does this apply to me, and how do I know more? Well, so I started offering training programs for people interested in developing their leadership skills. And that very first training program was amazing. We had some incredible results, incredible testimonials. Clients got a tremendous amount of value out of it. And I took that training program that I was delivering live and I recorded it. And then I attempted to sell, and for several months I did sell it, as a course. So I charged about $1,000. It was a course, it was 7 weeks, but it was all recorded, and then I had a live Q&A session every single week. Now this was a really interesting dynamic because it blended the nice part of being asynchronous with you could learn the content when you wanted to, with the opportunity to ask questions and get help in a live format. So it was a nice balance between those two. But what was interesting was selling that course, I sold it every single week, was a bit of a challenge. And sometimes some of these tools would take longer than just a week to implement because there were leadership topics and things that go a little bit deeper and take more time and effort. So I evolved to the next stage where I no longer sold it as a course, but I put everything into a membership. And that membership was called the B2B Leaders Academy. And inside that membership, I had recorded training content, which covered all the core foundational skills. And then we had weekly calls where you could join and ask questions and get essentially mastermind with other leaders from around the world. And this was a really great experience, and it lasted for about 2+ years or so. And the challenge with a membership is it's a monthly subscription. Not everybody is as open to a monthly subscription now, especially, as they were perhaps a few years ago. So when times get tight, like we're in an economic uncertainty state right now, one of the first things to go is the recurring things that people pay for. And if it's not a low ticket, $5, $10 a month thing or a Netflix subscription, it probably goes on the chopping block pretty fast. And I found it very difficult to get people interested in joining the membership in the summer of 2023, which caused me to evolve again and create the Leadership MBA. Now, the Leadership MBA is a 12-week live training program designed to empower leaders with the tools to confidently handle any situation. In the training, we cover the 4 pillars of leadership. That's personal leadership, which has everything to do with things that you control, your psychology, your strengths, how you master your time, how you build repeatable systems, everything that is within your control. And there's team leadership, which is all about everything that you do with your team. So the incredible tools that you can use in order to build an inclusive team identity, in order to go beyond surface level in your conversations by using coaching skills, in order to run incredible one-on-ones, effective team meetings, you name it, I've got you covered in the team leadership section. Now, the 3rd pillar is all about communication leadership. And in here, these are the tools that are designed to empower you to communicate your value and your team's value across the organization to anyone who has, even if they have no idea what it is that you do. And this is one of the most powerful pillars because it's one of the most often overlooked pillars. I hear from leaders all the time, I want people to know what I do, or isn't the work I do enough? The short answer is no. You must do what I say is market your leadership. And pillar 3 is all about exactly how to do that. And then pillar 4 rounds out with the performance metrics leadership. And this is all about how you use performance metrics in order to drive the behavior of your team. And we take a look at metrics from all different kinds of angles and look at things from not only the big picture and what's going to be important for your team and your department, but also how you can use metrics on a daily basis to drive the activities that you want and ultimately get the results that you want to see. So this 12-week program I created and I put together and I put it out to the world. I told my email list, I told my LinkedIn followers, I told everybody, and I said, hey, I've got this incredible 12-week program and I would love for you to join me. And you know what? The very first cohort, which started in October of 2023, had 30 people register, which was wonderful. I was ecstatic because now I had an opportunity to share my tools, my expertise, my beliefs, and things that I know can make a massive difference for anyone. I had an opportunity to chat with 30 people. Well, if I get to share that with 30 people, and each one of those people shares some of that experience and some of those tools with a number of people, then that ripple effect of change just keeps going out. And the more leaders that we have in this world that are equipped with leadership tools, that are in leadership positions, the better off this world will be. I fundamentally believe that because the vast majority of people in leadership positions today have never been taught how to lead. They have gotten to their level that they're in as a result of observation, and the tactics and the things that they do are things that they learned along the way, because the number one leadership development strategy for most people, you might agree with me on this, is I will figure it out. And guess what? Figuring it out is rife with failure, and it takes an inordinate amount of time. So why not take a shortcut, join a program because somebody else has already figured out how to do all this, number one, and how to teach all of it, number two. Those are two very different things. And you can access that in 12 short weeks, get your certificate from the Leadership MBA program. Now, if you'd like to learn more about the program and find out the dates when the next cohort is going to open, as it starts in February of 2024, the registration will be open starting December of 2023. So right after Thanksgiving, I'm going to open the doors, I'm going to get a new group enrolled, and we're going to start and kick things off in February of 2024, and I would love for you to join us. So if you're interested, simply go to leadershipmba.com and download the program guide. When you download the program guide, you'll see all the details for the program, including the dates, the classes, the learning outcomes for every single class I have listed. By the end of this class, you will be able to, and then I list the learning outcomes. So you'll know exactly what I am going to cover, and you will know exactly what you are going to be able to do after each and every single class. Now, the content alone is wonderful, but the other benefit is that you're going to be in a group with leaders in all different size companies at all different stages from all different regions of the world. And diversity of thought and perspective is incredibly important when it comes to leadership. So you need to have a diverse group of peers to be able to connect with and learn from and collaborate with in order to enhance and grow your leadership skills. It is one of the fastest and best ways to do that. Now, after the 12 weeks is over, I include a few months of leadership masterminds. And this is how I continue to support you, and the community continues to support you after the learning and the training of the 12 weeks is finished. So as soon as the 12 weeks is over, then you have an opportunity to join the Leadership Masterminds, which is where everyone who has been through the program before can come, can bring a question, bring a challenge, bring a situation they're struggling with, and get perspectives and coaching and insights from leaders from around the world. And when you open up your perspectives to things that other people see and experiences they've been through, even though they don't work in your company, the connections and the insights are absolutely, truly amazing. So I look forward to the opportunity to work with and get to know you inside the Leadership MBA. And this program will run several times a year. And each time there will be different incentives and promotions to join. But nothing will take over the fact that you can join in any cohort and in 12 weeks have an entire leadership toolkit to put you in the absolute most confident position so that you can save time, so you can get promoted, so you can build an inclusive team identity, so that you can build repeatable systems, so that you can communicate your value across your organization, so that you can use metrics like you've never used them before. Okay, so I look forward to having you join us. Again, if you're interested, go to leadershipmba.com and simply download the Leadership MBA program guide. Now, that's what's happened in my business. And that's a lot. You look at 9 years, you think that's a lot of time, but that is a lot of evolution. I'm talking about going from only thing I did was really consulting with a little bit of one-on-one coaching for the executives and things during that time, to completely shifting focus and spending much more time developing a program to have a much bigger impact in the world. Because when I was consulting, my impact was just me to the company, or me to the individuals in the company I was working with. When I'm running the Leadership MBA, as I mentioned before, imagine for a second that each of those 30 people now shares some of that knowledge with 5 people. Well, now I've just reached 150 people, and each of those people share some of that knowledge with another 5 people, and it just grows out and out and out. So one of my constant questions I'm always asking is, how do I have a bigger impact? I've gone through the trenches. I'm still in the trenches, frankly, in many, many areas. But I've been through the trenches, and I know what works. And I'm exceptional at taking complex topics like leadership, breaking it down into a simple to easy to understand framework like personal leadership, team leadership, communication leadership, performance metrics leadership, and then teaching tools that are practical and easy to implement that get results. That's one of my areas of expertise, and that's what I love to share. So in addition to my business evolving in this way, this podcast was a big part of that, because I got to, take a bird's eye view of what's going on across 100 different leaders, and I did some solo episodes as well, but 100 different leaders, what's going on in their world, number one, and how did they get to where they were? So when I first did the research for this show, and I came up with the idea, I did a bunch of searching, and what I found in the B2B space, everything leadership related was focused on sales and marketing. And it was how to sell more, how to market better, and that was it. There was literally nothing about leadership. And this goes to one of the interesting insights I've had over time, which is that leadership is often just that assumed thing. Well, you'll learn it by doing it on the job. And people who are not in leadership positions are saying, well, how do I learn it if I'm not in the job? I need the job in order to learn it, but I can't get in the job unless I learn it. Right? One of those catch-22 situations. The reality is, with the Leadership MBA, you can get the tools that you need in order to be successful in the leadership position. Now, what I wanted to do was shine a light on how people got to where they were. Because I knew everybody had a story, and a really interesting story. It's like when you meet someone at an event, whether it's a professional or personal event, and you get to know their story. It's fascinating to hear about all the twists and turns, the ups and downs, and the way they navigated the world. Well, that's what I wanted to highlight. I was really curious, how did that director get to the director level? How did the manager successfully navigate being promoted from IC to manager for the first time? How did the VP get to where they are? And I knew what I had done and I knew what made me successful, but I wanted to know how other people got there. So for the first 60 plus episodes, these were all centered on my guest experience, and I was just really curious. And if you've listened to some of those episodes, you know that I ask some great questions, and I ask lots and lots of questions because I'm infinitely curious about other people. And I was fascinated by the stories that I heard from my guests, and I was really excited to share their stories with the world where a lot of them hadn't been on a podcast before. A lot of them hadn't had an opportunity to share that. And so part of my job during that time was to help share their expertise in a way that was meaningful for them, but also for me, because I wanted to share it with you, my audience. Now, there were a lot of common threads which aligned with my leadership philosophy and kind of the bottom line thing of everything of how these individuals got to these incredible career positions was about becoming the CEO of your career. And what this means is that ultimately you decide what you want. You take control. You realize you are the only person to be able to 100% make the call on what's right for you, on what training program to attend, on what skills to acquire, on what the right position is for you. But the key is you do not wait for someone else or your company to dictate what you can learn, where you can go, or what you can achieve. Because if you let someone else dictate where you can go, you're only going to get as far as they think you should. And I guarantee that is not as far as you think you should. It is you're never going to be able to replace your passion and drive and achievement level taking direction from somebody else. It's just not possible. We are all wired to intrinsically want something more. Now, what more means is different for everybody. I'm not saying that promotion is the only way to go. But if you're an expert in a particular area and you have an opportunity to go work with a coach or go join a training program, and you ask your boss in your company to support you and sponsor you in that, and the boss and company says, nope, we're not going to pay for it. Well, if you're not the CEO of your career, you say, okay, well, my boss said I couldn't do it, so I'm just not going to learn that skill. I'm just not going to work with that coach, not going to go through that program, and just kind of give up and go back to the figuring out how to get it done, right? Now, if you are the CEO of your career, what that looks like is now you're presented with an opportunity to be resourceful. And the most successful people are resourceful. So you look at that and say, okay, this is going to cost $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000 or $100,000, whatever it is. How can I possibly acquire that or use money that I have or resources that I have? How can I possibly use everything I know in order to figure out how to engage and pay for this? Right? That's what it means to be the CEO of your career, because you do it not just because you want to pay money and be in charge of spending money. You do it because you believe that that skill set will be able to add more value as a result of having that. So you can add more value to yourself, to your company, to your customers, to your friends, to your family. You can add more value if you acquire that skill set. Well, then it's always a no-brainer, yes. Now, I didn't think this way for almost the first 9-10 years of my professional career. But once I've made the flip, that whole story is for a different day. Once I made that change, everything changed. I became a certified leadership coach when I was still an individual contributor. I wasn't even in a leadership position. And that program cost me many thousands of dollars, of which I did not have at that time. But I figured out a way to get it. I paid for it, and I figured out a way to pay myself back. Had I never gone through that initiative and that program and done all the work around being a coach, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't be hosting this podcast. I can guarantee you that. I would still be doing what I was doing the first 10 years of my career, which is waiting for somebody else to tell me what to do. You know where that ended up? I ended up as an individual contributor in a bunch of not great fit jobs, waiting and hoping for some manager to come in and that I would take me under their wing and teach me everything I needed to know. The reality is that is never going to happen. It was never going to happen for me. And it wasn't until I made the choice, I made the decision to be the CEO of my career that old belief completely disappeared. And I began to get really resourceful, and I began to get really creative, and I began to get very driven about what I wanted. And when I set and determined what I wanted, and then I ultimately found the ways to achieve it because other people had already achieved it and I just paid for their programs or their coaching to get it, well, I went from an IC to a VP in 2.5 years. Simple as that. Conceptually simple, I will say. Right? So the themes that I saw in these episodes were wonderful. And as we progressed through getting closer to 100 where we are now, I realized I wanted to have more conversations as opposed to an interview. And the interviews are wonderful because I get to learn all about the guest, but the conversations are really more in depth. And I wanted to give you, the audience, an opportunity to be on the fly of the wall of something, a conversation that I was having with somebody else. And I have conversations like what is recorded all the time with these guests. Many of them are personal connections and friends that I've had for a long time. And when you get a chance to be a fly on the wall and hear what goes on in a conversation, you can get a lot of value out of it and you get a lot of inspiration too. So I shifted to these topic-specific episodes where guests and I discuss things like how to have difficult conversations, how to sell with value, how to overcome presentation anxiety, and many, many more. So I've had incredible guests. We've had some wonderful conversations. And now we're at episode number 100. That's how we got here. My business has evolved. This podcast has evolved. If you take away anything from this episode, it's evolve in every area, everything that you do in your leadership day to day. How are you going to evolve next month, next quarter, next year? Do you have the right set of tools? If you don't or want to formalize your entire leadership toolkit, come and join us in the Leadership MBA. I will give you the full toolkit and you can take that and apply it. And then guess what? You can also help other people achieve and grow from a leadership skill perspective, because there is nothing but goodness that happens when we share real leadership skills. And nothing but goodness happens when we take the fast track, because you can always spend 3, 5, 10 years. But would you rather learn everything you need in 3 short months and then spend 3, 5, and 10 years applying those tools as opposed to learning them one at a time? It is far more impactful, it's far more enjoyable, and we just have a much, much bigger impact on the world. So just like the first 100 episodes, the next 100, it's going to be an evolution. All right, maybe we'll change from this fly on the wall conversation piece to something different. And if you have an input on this, I'd encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn or email nils@leadershipmba.com and tell me, did you appreciate these episodes? What did you take away? What kinds of things would you like to hear over the next 100 episodes? And I take all of that feedback into account and I evolve. And you always guarantee on me evolving every single step of the way. I will never do the exact same thing over and over and over just because it's the way it's been done before. There's always a way to improve. And if Tony Robbins loves to say, if you're not growing, you're dying. And I love that sentiment because it just means that we have to evolve in order to grow. In order to grow in our leadership, in order to grow in our personal lives, in order to grow in our professional lives, in order to grow in our career, in our family, in our communities, in our, you name it. In order to grow, you must evolve. So until the next episode, number 101, which is coming up soon, I hope you take care and have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you immensely for being with me on this 100 episode journey. Take care.